Hello, this is Christian Idealism, and today I want to answer a question, which is, what is heaven going to be like? So I have thought about this, well, ever since I was, child, um, because the question of what heaven is has a lot of different answers, a lot of different perspectives. And I'm not going to pretend like my view is unique or anything like that. I'm just going to give a general answer. So and this is, of course, my opinion. So I'm not claiming that I actually know what it's like. I don't think really anybody knows what it's really like. I think we can. I think at best what we can do is we can extrapolate. So we can take the best moments of our lives and then extrapolate from there and try to come up with some model of what it might look like. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think we actually know what it's really like. I mean, and Scripture itself even tells us this. Nobody really knows what it's like. Now, we can have some ideas, and that's kind of what I'm going to go over. So, I want to make a distinction first between heaven in the pre resurrection state versus heaven in the post resurrection state, or what's commonly referred to as the new heavens and the new earth. So, heaven in the pre resurrection state obviously is going to be different than the heaven in the post resurrection state, just because in the pre resurrection state, we don't have bodies. So, the question is, well, what is heaven? And I think the best answer is basically just gonna be heaven is certainly not. I can tell you what it's not. So it's definitely not just this white room. It's also probably most likely not gonna be um, like you're not gonna have a body, so you're not gonna be able to have any like sensational experiences. But I think what you will have is you will have direct access to God. So unmediated access. So typically within the Catholic tradition, Eastern Orthodox tradition, and certain Protestant traditions, there's this notion called the beatific vision. And the beatific vision is just basically this notion that you have direct access to God, like you see God's true form. Um, and I don't know what that looks like. Um, it's said that if you did experience God's true form, you would essentially be experiencing the best possible thing. Um, and I think that's generally why those that experience the beatific vision cannot sin. It's not that they have the inability to sin in any logical sense, but they have acquired the very thing that they've desired all along. So it's this process of discovery, right? All the sins that we commit in this life are really connected to. So what I'm saying is, like, I think our sinful desires are themselves grounded in holy desires, and then those desires are further grounded in our desire for God. And the reason why I think that's the case is because God is a perfect being. He's the best possible being that could exist. And so because of that, then if you came across the best possible thing that could exist, then you wouldn't want anything else, like by default. Like, I mean, for example, here's one way to look at it as an analogy. If you became, let's say, a celebrity with all this money, right? Would you really want to go back? Let's say you lived a horrible life and then you became a celebrity later in life. I think most people would say no, they prefer the better life as a celebrity, right? Now, of course, being a celebrity has its own challenges, right? Certainly. But a lot of people have this notion like, hey, I want to be a celebrity. I want to, like, have fame and money and all this stuff. Now, of course, those are good things, right? But those aren't like the ultimate good thing. But for God, God is the ultimate good thing. And so if you came across the ultimate good thing, then you can't, like, you're not gonna have any desire to prefer anything else. And that's just because you know, well, at least for me, I mean, not every Christian holds this view, but I'm a Humean about desire, so I think that it's desires all the way down. I think most of pretty much all of our actions are gonna ultimately stem from a desire that we have. And so because of that, if we came across our ultimate desire, which is God, then there is no other possible desire that could overturn that. And that's the explanation on my account for why if you saw God's true form, it would be impossible for you to reject him after that point, right? You could reject him before that. So you could, let's say you're ignorant or something. Like, you could reject God if you don't have the beatific vision because you don't know what it's like. But once you know what it's like to have that kind of experience, you can't go back. It's gonna, like, there is no way to get away from that. So that's what I think heaven is. I think that heaven is where you come across God himself. And heaven in the pre-resurrection state is the experience of God in his full glory. Now, what about the post-resurrection state? So actually, I think this one's a little more complicated, obviously, because we're going to have bodies, right? So obviously we're going to be divinized in some way. And so with the post-resurrection state, heaven in that sense is going to be more like our world, except everything's going to be like 100 million times better, probably, I'm assuming. So again, I have to extrapolate from the experiences that I have to try to infer about what the post-resurrection state is going to be like. But I do think that a post-resurrection state, you can think of it, I guess, in the closest we can get is something like a utopia, like a perfect world where there's no suffering and there's just never-ending joy and love, right? And of course, in the post-resurrection state, we're all going to have bodies. And so because of that, then what we could say is, like, hey, we're going to have resurrection bodies just like Christ. And we're going to, like, I don't know if we're going to have jobs. I'm assuming we would. I don't really know. But what I do know is that whatever heaven's going to be like in that state is going to be just a bodily version, or an incarnational version of whatever heaven in the pre-resurrection state is. And so, in some sense, you could say that God himself enters the universe, and everything would be governed by him rather than, natural forces or anything like that. And so because of that, because God enters, like, basically what I'm saying is divine hiddenness is completely removed. And so now you are in the full presence of God constantly. And because in the post-resurrection state, because of the incarnation, right, then obviously whatever Jesus is going to be in his fully glorified state. So yeah, of course, again, this is all speculative, right? I don't actually know what it's really going to be like. This is all just theory based on the certain traditions in the church, as well as my own personal life experience. But that's my theory. I think that basically, heaven is, the pre-resurrection state is when you are in the full presence of God and you experience his glory. And then heaven in the post-resurrection state is where theosis takes place, where we actually become more like God over time, right? Of course, we never reach there, but we continually, infinitely grow in infinite good. So in both scenarios, I think a post-resurrection state is going to be where we experience infinite goods, right? And again, I don't know what that's going to be, but that's what I know. At least that's what I can extrapolate. And so yeah, I certainly don't think that heaven is like, I mean, maybe there's golden gates or something, but I think that's just symbolism for what it really is. I think that whatever heaven's going to be is something much better than what people imagine in their heads. And that's kind of the whole point, right? Like, yeah, I have a theory about what it might be, but even my theory is probably incomplete. So I do admit that my picture is certainly probably not the correct one. I don't think anybody's is. And so we have to do the best with what we have. Anyways, it's been 10 minutes now, and I don't like to make videos longer than 10 minutes, so I'm going to close it off. But yeah, that's what I think heaven is. And let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think heaven is, and then we can, discuss it.